how did you become a non-feminist woman?
So I guess I sort of became a non-feminist woman, sort of more developed into one over time, just sort of through school. Um, so unrelated, but slightly related. My father actually is a men's rights activist. He's been for a while. But I actually had no idea that he was until I was about 18. We knew he believed in equality, and that was about it. But when I was at school, the school system here is so strict about their rules, and they are just so adamant on painting guys and boys as these like predators and always troublemakers early on. We always had 2 troublemakers in our class, and they were always the boys. Even if we had girls that would get in trouble, they would say, yeah, but the biggest troublemakers are the boys. I don't think I ever saw a girl in my middle school or elementary school ever get sent to detention, no matter how badly they acted. Maybe once, that was it. Mm-hmm. It was almost always their parents were called. Boys were in there constantly. I remember once we'd gotten pulled in the hallway, and my friends and I were playing around, and they took the boys of the office and sent me back to the classroom, and they'd gone in trouble in detention after school, even though we'd all been playing in the hallway. And so it already seemed quite unfair as it was. And then on top of that, too, we went through a phase in middle school. I remember this pretty well because they had this rule. I don't know if they have this in other countries or in other places. I know a lot of other schools do this in different districts in different states, where it's called the 3-finger rule. Mm-hmm. If your skirt or your shorts are 3 fingers above your knee, they're considered inappropriate. Mm-hmm. But the only people they ever checked for that rule were the females. Mm-hmm. And when we asked the teachers why that was the case, they made it sound like it was the boys' fault that we had the rule. They were like, oh, that's just the way things work. You know, it's just inappropriate. It's different for the boys. They don't have to deal with that. And frankly, if you have someone to blame, it's people who made these rules, which are the men who started these schools. I was like, well, way to put the blame right back on the guys. Mm-hmm. And then from there, I went to high school. And I went to a very interesting high school because it was a bit of a rough school. It wasn't a terrible school. It was a very good quality, decent quality school. But it was odd because our school had a sort of 50-50 mix. At the time I went, it's very different now. My brother goes to that school now. It's very different. But the time I went, it was a weird 50-50 mix between these higher class kids and these kids that were sort of the ghetto, or at least acted like it. They weren't on it, but they acted like it quite a bit. And so it brought a mix of different issues. And our dean was just an absolutely very unenthusiastic, sort of lazy guy. So he never fully investigated when people made claims against other people. So because of that, there were so many people, 2 who would end up being my friends, who ended up falsely accused, and one of those friends would end up in juvie. Mm-hmm. Okay. Because then the parents of the individual who accused him would take action, and they got a
falsely accused
court order of protection, but they refused to move their child
accused from of what? Of what? What was he accused of?
Sexual harassment.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. They would just they wouldn't investigate. My other friend was also accused of sexual harassment, and they didn't even investigate. They just immediately gave him a mark on his record, which made him lose his sports scholarship. So that was
okay. Yeah. So this is a risk, yeah. Okay. Do you believe that we live in a patriarchy in the West here? Do you consider society to be patriarchal, or do you think men have all the power or more power than women? Not really.
No.
Okay.
Not really. I just. This is the joke I like to tell. I'm like, where is it? I'm looking for the patriarchy.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah. Okay. What are your thoughts on traditional gender roles?
I don't think they're the greatest. I also don't think they're terrible. For the longest time, I sort of thought gender roles were just corrupt to have because I would see the negative effect of them. Nobody ever felt they were in their nature. I noticed females felt very pressured to, be feminist, be in roles they didn't want to. Some people would tell them they shouldn't succeed as much. I also noticed with guys, there was such high expectations on them. They felt like they always had to pay, they had to provide, and some of them just wanted to take their time, and everyone was telling, no, you have to find your career now, so you have to support everything. It was immense pressure on both sides. I really just...
Okay.
I saw no point of gender roles. My boyfriend pointed out, he's like, yes, it puts a lot of pressure, and yes, there are really toxic parts to gender roles, but there's also a biological aspect to it, so... I'll sort of change these to, if biologically you're comfortable with staying within your gender role, that's your choice.
Right, okay. Yeah. Okay. What are your thoughts on men's rights activists?
I'm probably biased on this because my dad, but I honestly think they're generally a pretty misunderstood group. And I say that because I think the issue is that a lot of people look at MRAs. And first of all, they don't even look at people that are MRAs as MRAs. Like, Andrew Tate has never, to my knowledge, straight out come out and said, I'm a men's rights activist. But everyone is claiming he's the new godfather of it, which is like...
Yeah.
He's not even an example, but people are so focused on the toxic parts or other groups that are related to it, but they aren't actually listening to some of the more real activists like Lauren Farrell or Jerry Crouch or some of these others who've been at this for a while, and none of them, if you actually hear them in real life, ever try to really say anything against women's movements or anything that matter. And to be honest, they made, granted not a lot because there's a lot of pushback, but they've made some changes towards the dynamic and normalization of men's issues. In the last couple of years, men's mental health has actually been brought to the table, which it wasn't previously, and a lot of that works from men's commissions, which were put together with the help of some men's groups. Certain lawsuits. Here in the U.S., we had the draft for a long time, and that was deemed to be unconstitutional. And I know in some states, unfortunately, they haven't yet changed it, but in other states, they've already changed it where it's no longer required for you to sign up for the draft to get your financial aid as a male. So those changes, honestly, realistically, probably would not have been made possible without some of these men's rights activists and what they bring to the media. And some of them bring really good points that have been on, like, I know there's some really toxic ones on TikTok, but there are also some ones on TikTok that have just been realistic, and they brought some really good viewpoints, and you're seeing people see these videos, and it's changing their perspective. So I don't think they're that bad. I think you just have to find the right person, because there's obviously some false activists out there, or some who let their personal issues get in the way of what really needs to be said, but it's not all of them.
Okay. What are your thoughts on intersectionality?
So I took a course in social work, one, to fill a requirement, and it was specifically on diversity.
Yeah.
And so we went through intersectionality for a whole unit.
Right.
And the way they described it sounded like the biggest oversimplification
right.
of different life issues I've ever heard. Because they brought out this whole graph, and it was like these circles, and in the main circle closest to the center, it was like white, male, tall, Christian.
Right.
And then from there, it went, like the next level was like Catholic, Hispanic, or half, they didn't even have mixed people actually on the chart, funny enough.
Yeah.
So apparently we're not even a category still on the chart of privilege.
Right.
But
I guess you're half privileged, half not, you know?
Yeah, you're half privileged, half not.
Yeah.
And they had lighter skin tone, medium height, and then they have female, and then just kept going from there. And I was like, well, that's such an oversimplification.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're going to be at so many different levels in all those categories, and you never know what's going on in life. Like, this chart acts like there's no such thing as rich Latinos or like...
Yeah, privilege
or
comes in many forms.
players.
Yeah, it's very difficult to gauge what is privilege. And I am sympathetic towards intersectionality because I do believe that different groups face different problems, and some groups have privileges and some groups have disadvantages.
It was a course that was offered under social work school. And I will say, I'm going to be honest, although the rest of the course, which talked about all different racial groups and ethnic groups and their kind of cultures and issues they tend to go through traditionally, was somewhat useful, just intersectionality didn't seem like it was really quite useful to anyone.
Yeah.
I understand the concept, and it's not a terrible idea. Like, it's not a bad concept. There are some biases, but like even some of the other diverse people in that class noted, they said, well, it doesn't really help too much.
I like the concept and everything. It's just that I don't understand how they, like, if they were gonna do that concept, fine, do it. Mm-hmm. But then I would say you have to include all groups, right? So you would have to include men, and you would have to put what are their disadvantages and what are their privileges. And for women, you would also have to put what are their advantages in society, what are their... I don't like the way in which they say, like just one group, and then they kind of like say black people just underprivileged. There's like no privilege to being black. And I feel like, no, there are privileges as well. You know, you have to like acknowledge that it's a bit more nuanced than that like each group has advantages and disadvantages, including men, women, black, white, all of them have different sets. And I could understand, you could say, okay, maybe for this group it weighs out more or less. But yes, it is possible to say that. I understand that. But I feel as if in our culture today and in feminism, they got it wrong with men and women.
For sure. They're so busy lifting everything that we're disadvantaged, and they keep acting like they're so advanced on the outside.
So they would take the whole thing and say, men have all this power. They are seen as leaders. They are seen as this. They are seen as that. And it's like, is that actually so? I'm not sure. It's like there are disadvantages to that. What about the guy who doesn't want to be a leader, but that is being forced on him? He feels like he has pressure. Or is it actually so that we see men as more leaders? I am not sure. So I don't know if their stereotypes and everything are correct. I understand the concept, but I don't feel like if they used it right or put everything in the correct order. And that's just not my worldview on where people stand in terms of discrimination, So, yeah, but it is a complicated one. But I understand
how they don't execute it well either.
No.
I've noticed a lot of these groups are, I'm trying to remember, it was a while back, we were talking at NCFM about this lady who was running this group, and they were offering a program to help Hispanics. I was looking through this program, and this program actually was not the most well geared for the Hispanic population, but they were a proclaimed intersectional feminist group trying to help make the world a socially better place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's what they claim to be. I was like, for a group that's doing that, none of your programs seem to actually.
No, because if they were really intersectional, I feel like if just based on the concept of intersectionality, if they were truly intersectional, they would so care about men. Like, I feel like they would include men, and I feel like they would go even further and include, I feel like the most disadvantaged people are poor, right? And I feel like in our world today, the most disadvantaged people are globally poor people, like the global, as they would say, like the global south or whatever, like globally poor people. So I feel like if that is where their attention would go, like for me, actually, the concept of intersectionality makes sense, but where it leads, I know a lot of people say it leads to like communism. or it's what is it they call it, cultural Marxism. So it's cultural Marxism, and who knows, it could lead to actual Marxism because the most disadvantaged people are poor. But for me, where it would lead me, if I were to be a feminist, if I were to believe in this doctrine and I were to say, okay, I am intersectional feminist, I believe in intersectionality, the most logical thing for me, that would lead me to care about the global poor. I wouldn't even address communism or Marxism within my country. I'd be like, the biggest disadvantage globally that we have is poor people in poor countries, right? So you as an intersectional feminist should go out there and try to get water and food and help poor communities in the absolutely the poorest parts of the world. That would be where intersectionality would lead me to. If I say, okay, I don't have a problem with the concept, but if you're going to look at this concept, the people who are the most disadvantaged would be the globally poor people, and that's just where it would lead me. I would not somehow use intersectionality to come up with the idea that women in the US and in the first world are disadvantaged. It's like, yeah, intersectionality makes sense. However, by my math, we don't end up with women, okay? And if you do end up with women being disadvantaged, then men are as well. You know? Yeah.
Other logic, we should end up at like opening schools in other countries, and
so that's where it would take me. Yeah, no, it wouldn't take me, but anyway. So, what is your take on gynocentrism? Do you think the world is gynocentric?
This is like a mixed answer. I think it's a half and half.
Mm-hmm.
I think it slightly is, but I think that's a biological thing. I don't think it should be, because I think in many ways that has hindered us a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think there seems to be some kind of biological factor where we are, for some reason, a little more leaning towards protecting women and children.
Mm-hmm.
This family concept that's sort of always been there, and so it's like, the guy goes out, the woman protects the kids and
mm-hmm.
cooks. No, I mean, even that's not the most relevant. With more recent revelations, I guess, if you look at science about, they're finding out that women actually are the ones who went and did a lot of, so in the hunting and gathering, very hunter-gatherer communities. So, not sure how accurate that is, but it seems to be there in a weird biological, social sense, as if it mixed together. Like, it's been ingrained for so long.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I feel like it's really not something that's like that, because if you notice, a lot of the people pushing the kind of agenda that women's first and women in STEM and things like that, a lot of wealthy people.
Yeah, that's true.
Putting money into ads, and they're sending money to these organizations, and they're helping out these programs, and they're very chivalrous themselves. And so what they do is they invest in things that they think reflects themselves. And so if they're chivalrous and they personally believe that, everything needs to protect and surround and be around women, then that's exactly where the money is going to go. And so it's one of those things where it feels like it's just sort of rich-centric. It's, well, whatever we can do to get the whale with all the cash.
Okay.
Sorry for any people that had hope, but
yeah,
it's a money world out there.
Yeah. What is your take on hypergamy? Do you think that women choose men based on money, status, social standing, or do you think these things play a role when women are choosing a spouse? I mean, a partner.
Okay, so like in general though, so not in a specific way.
Yeah, like, do you think that women marry up? Do they like want to like couple with someone who like has the highest status, or how much of a role do you think this plays for women?
Honestly, I feel like it plays a good chunk of role. Maybe not early on in their lives, but later on, when they start getting their midterms and later, and they're thinking about settling down, I feel like it plays a bit of a role. How much a person can offer to the table, how much they can put money down, if they have a car or not.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
okay, yeah.
There's been like couples out there that we've seen where it's like a much older guy, younger woman. It's a lot of status stuff, and there are a lot of times it is just love. But even then, there's usually some kind of set plan for how money and status is going to come about. So, unfortunate to say, but I do think it plays a role in some choosing later on when you're trying to settle down, because they'd rather choose a stable person, which isn't wrong, you know. You want to choose someone you know you can depend on.
Okay. What do you think about male reproductive rights? Do you think men need reproductive rights or not really?
I think they do, if I'm
Okay.
going to be honest.
Okay, so you would, I
from,
suppose you're pro-choice as well, right?
yeah.
Right, and you think men should also have the right to opt out of parenthood?
That other parents just going to keep ending up in jail because they can't afford their child support. So unfortunately, here in the U.S., that's our system.
Yeah.
Is after a certain amount of times, they can take away your driver's license, they can put you in jail, they can take your property, etc.
Okay. What is your take on being called a pick-me girl?
Oh my god. I cannot stand people. I know they exist, but why are we the pick-me's? That's what I'd like to understand here. What part of me is picking anybody? I'm not doing this for attention. I'm not doing this to find a man. I'm doing this because I watch my friends end up in places they shouldn't have ended up because somebody was too lazy to do their job. Because we have a society that teaches them not to care when they end up in jail for 3 times the amount of time, or not to care about putting a mark on their record. Like, it's fine. They're supposed to take it. They're the men. And I'm like, no, it's not. He had a full scholarship that he could have had, and you just took that away like it was nothing. So, I really do not see how that is any kind of pick-me attitude. I think that's just called wanting rights for other people and just as much investigative effort. And I know this part doesn't matter and it might be a little petty, but I'm pretty sure I picked my boyfriend. So
okay.
Yeah.
You already picked. You already picked, so it's I agree.
Yeah, I'm already picked. So I don't know who you think I'm asking to pick me.
Okay. Do you have a YouTube channel or anywhere? Do you have anything that you want to advertise or tell YouTube about?
I do not have my own YouTube channel, though if you do want to see me speaking, NCFM, which is National Coalition for Men, has their own YouTube channel, which you can go to.
Okay. What else can you tell me about your views on feminism in general and men's rights and so on? Like, what are you most passionate about? Or
I would say,
just in general, what would you?
Yeah, I would say honestly, the thing I'm most passionate about is currently just the whole thing with sort of getting more awareness to these men's groups and these issues, because it just needs to be taken more seriously. As I said, I've had friends falsely accused. In the mental health sphere, there's almost no mental health resources for men, like barely any. They're just starting to pop up. DC started its first ever commission for men's mental health, which is amazing. Jail time is 3 times longer for males, and it's one of these things where I'm not against where some people say it's like women's rights, women's issues. I'm just saying you don't have to exclude men's issues out of it. And more importantly, you don't have to target them. Because I don't think they realize they target them a lot of times. I've seen this thing about, oh, well, there's frail masculinity or toxic masculinity. And I'm like, well, if you want to talk about toxic masculinity, what about toxic femininity? You know, what about these girls that are going out here and having such high standards or beating their boyfriend or whatever else they're doing, and you're not talking about it?
Mm-hmm.
You know, male TV has been found to be the same percentage as female TV. It's almost 50-50. But we don't see a DV shelter yet for men.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we don't see CPS taking the possible abuse of the male in the household more seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, I know they're supposed to focus on children, and that's great. You know, when you see their investigation and they're investigating, there's a lot of assumptions already there in their mind, along with like police training.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they always assume the guy's the one who did something. So it'd be great if feminists could, granted, I don't know if it'll ever happen in my lifetime, but some of these feminists could wake up and realize, hey, what you're doing is, instead of helping everyone, because that's another thing, the amount of people are like, feminism wants to help everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Then why are there 10 different types of feminism?
Mm-hmm.
If feminism was to help everybody, why didn't you just need one kind of feminism? Why is there like 10 different types?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then why can none of these 10 different types agree? Some of you support trans, some of you don't. Some of you support minorities, some of you don't. Like,
okay. Yeah. I didn't know there were types that don't support minorities.
Apparently.
Okay. Yeah. But mostly, why can't they support everybody? Doesn't include half the population. Like, feminism is for everybody except half the population. How is that everybody, you know? And then they say feminism is for men as well. But the truth is that...
And then the men they bring are, like, not the greatest examples. Like, some are volunteers, some having gone through a lot of stuff. And they're all saying, oh, well, men go through it. It's like, it's the same three... That sounds bad. It's the same three coin men, like... Mm-hmm. It's the same three dudes that they bring to every rally, and they say, see, we support men too. It's like, really? Why is there 3 of them and not like 40? Because
no, well, I mean, they support men too, but they believe in the doctrine. They base their doctrine is based on something like patriarchy theory, which according to them says that men have all this power, which they don't. They support men, but they believe that men are oppressive towards women. I mean, this is not support, because you've supported men, but you're telling them that they are oppressing women when they're not. I mean, yes, men, we have social structures that granted men and women different levels of power at different times and in different situations and so on. And in some situations, we grant more to men. In some situations, we grant more to women within society. And maybe we have to break down those structures of society so it changes and we have some more freedom. Okay, fine. But the entire doctrine of feminism sort of paints men as these people with power and who oppress women, and paint women as victims of men. I don't see how that could be inclusive of men. That is inclusive of men who believe that, but not the rest.
Exactly. And when you start educating that in classes, or that was a bad way of wording. When you start teaching that in classes, like, you're like, oh, this is feminism, this is what we believe. And, you know, look, men have the power and stuff. And you pull out things like that, it's like, well, that's really not inclusive of everybody. You're sort of just telling everyone else to blame the other 50%.
Right, you told us a story. They don't include the people who see the story differently. And there are many people who do, men and women. We're trying to say that yeah, okay, everybody, almost everybody. I haven't met anyone who doesn't believe in equality. Like, for everybody. Like, everyone believes that we are all equal or should be all equal or stuff like that. Like, everybody's fine with that part of it. Some people believe that men and women are very different and so we can't have true equality. That's fine. And some people want true equality. But everybody believes in something close to equality, you know, equity, whatever. If they're different, then you balance for the differences and stuff. So nobody doesn't believe in equality, right? But the thing is that the problem where feminism comes in is that they are for women, and they claim they are for women because women are victims. And this is the problem, because not everyone agrees that women are the ultimate or only victims. And then they say, oh, patriarchy hurts men too. It hurts men too. No, it hurts men. The same way it hurts women, it hurts men. Equal, there's no two, it's equal. It's equal. It hurts the same amount of men as it hurts for women. As in, the women who hated patriarchy, y'all are probably the same amount in numbers as the men who hate it. It's, so it just hurts men. That's it. And therefore...
And the problem is it gives an excuse for all women to act like victims, I feel like.
Right.
So they're like, oh, women are the victim. And it's like, but not every woman. But now... some women are like, well, because I'm this and this, I'm also a victim.
Right,
like,
and not all women...
of what?
Exactly, not all women feel as if they were victims of society or that we were oppressed. Or there's some women who loved patriarchy, who would have been totally fine with the structures of society as they were, just as there were probably some men who were totally fine with it as well. This is diversity. This is how human diversity works, And if they are inclusive of that, then they need to be inclusive of everyone. And they can't name their whole thing feminism and focus just on women and say we're talking about women now, but this is for equality. No, you're talking about women, therefore it's not an equality movement, it's a woman's movement. And we'd like to say, if you have a woman's movement, we need a men's movement. And actually, since these genders should probably work together, let's just forget all that and work together,
Yeah. The genders help movement, like
whatever, gender equality movement, okay, if that's what is needed, Okay, well, this is gonna end now, so the interview is over. Thanks a lot for interviewing, and if you are on Facebook, then join the group Women Against Feminism if you can. And thanks a lot for your time. And
thanks for having me.
Yes.